Have you ever paused right in the middle of a chaotic, endless workday, looked around, and thought, wait a minute, is this entire system literally designed to burn me out? Well, today we're jumping straight into a fascinating explainer that decodes the hidden playbook of the modern workplace. We're going to strip away all the corporate buzzwords to examine the invisible architecture of labor extraction. Basically, how organizations manage to pull so much time, energy, and value out of us, often leaving us with very little long-term stability to show for it. And this isn't just about having a bad boss. It's about a carefully constructed corporate mirage. So let's dive right in and uncover exactly how this machine works. Let's start with a highly relatable scenario that the source material lays out perfectly. Picture this. You go through this rigorous, exhausting hiring process. You're handed a beautiful, shiny blueprint of a job. The recruiters are glowing. The managers are promising you creative freedom, autonomy, and a crystal clear path to growth, right? So you sign the contract, totally thrilled to have found a long-term fit. But once you're actually in the door, the reality starts to quietly shift beneath your feet. The autonomy vanishes. That creative role suddenly turns into endless grunt work. It feels exactly like a subtle bait and switch, but you just can't quite put your finger on when the rules actually changed. Okay, so here's our agenda for today's explainer. We're covering 1. The corporate bait and switch. 2. Workers versus players. 3. The art of overpromising. 4. Spells of workplace sorcery. And finally, 5. Learning to play the game. Let's kick things off with section 1. The corporate bait and switch, or the trap of false promises. You see, this trap doesn't just snap shut on day 1. It's more of a slow, calculated burn. In month 1, there's almost always this dangling carrot. Maybe it's a strong possibility of extension or a vague promise of a big promotion. You're super motivated, you're giving 110%, eager to prove your worth. But by month 6, a silent downgrade happens. That promised strategic ownership subtly degrades into endless, repetitive revisions and what the source bluntly calls production support. Then, boom, month 12 hits. The project wraps, and instead of that long-term collaboration they were hinting at, the mandate suddenly becomes, hey, upload your files, document everything, and disappear politely. The source argues this life cycle isn't some accident of bad management. No, it's actually a structural necessity designed to keep you highly motivated right up until the exact moment your final deliverable is extracted. It's honestly a pretty chilling realization when you see how the architects of these corporate environments actually view things. Sure, they wrap their control in incredibly friendly, collaborative language, but underneath all that, they don't necessarily view workers as living, breathing human beings with families and health needs. The text captures this perfectly, saying they see you as a tool, a highly paid janitor program, a temporary process running inside another process. Their underlying playbook is basically to overpromise to get you in, extract your absolute best work, delay any real rewards, reframe your complaints, and ultimately just replace you when you burn out. All right, moving on to section 2, workers versus players, and the core dichotomy at play here. This brings us to a massive, fundamental divide in how the modern economy actually rewards people, which, by the way, is vastly different from how we're taught it works in school. The system basically sets up 2 totally distinct paths. On one side, you have the worker. The worker trades their literal hours for a paycheck. They're measured strictly by their output, which inherently leaves them financially fragile. If they stop working, the money stops. Simple as that. On the other side, though, you have the player. The player isn't selling time. They own assets, systems, and platforms. They're measured by their future potential, and crucially, they are compensated for the control and leverage they bring to the table. You could spend decades being the hardest worker in the entire room, but if you're only paid for your time, you remain fundamentally vulnerable. So here's the heavy truth we all have to wrestle with. Hard work alone is just maintenance. Leverage is what actually creates wealth. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly give your all only to feel like you're barely treading water. Without ownership, a lifetime of flawless, dedicated execution won't create true financial independence. It really just keeps someone else's machine running smoothly. Now, hard work is undeniably important, for sure, but it only translates to lasting stability when it's attached to leverage. If you own the system, even a decent effort builds equity. If you don't, your maximum effort just pays your rent for another month. Which leads us perfectly into section 3, the art of overpromising, or the theatrical game. If hard work isn't the main driver of massive corporate rewards, what on earth is? Well, here is a hard truth. The market doesn't just buy what exists. It buys the story of what might exist. The source makes this really compelling case that the highest levels of the corporate game are not just technical or economic. They are highly theatrical. Massive financial rewards and status frequently flow to the charismatic people who master the narrative of potential, rather than the quiet, diligent employees who are actually grinding out the daily deliverables. This theater of potential explains why aggressive overpromising is often a way more effective strategy for career advancement than just quiet, reliable execution. Just watch how beautifully reality gets spun by people who really get this theatrical game. As long as someone holds enough status or organizational gravity, they can completely warp reality to fit their narrative. A dangerous, unlikely edge case that suddenly gets rebranded in a pitch deck as a grand vision. Massive, totally irresponsible risks are sold as exciting moonshots. When projects fall severely behind schedule, it's not a failure of management. No, it's reframed as incredible ambition. An actual total failure, that just becomes a necessary iteration. The narrative is continuously manipulated to keep the story of potential alive, which completely masks the extractive reality that the workers lower down are forced to navigate every single day. All right, let's look at section 4, spells of workplace sorcery, and the manipulative vocabulary used against us. To keep this whole mirage functioning, management relies on some very specific psychological tactics, what the source fascinatingly calls spells of workplace sorcery. A primary spell here is future faking. This is the deliberate act of promising a better future, specifically to control your behavior right now. Think of that phantom promotion dangled right before a massive project deadline. The organization extracts your loyalty, your compliance, and your weekends today, all in exchange for an illusion of an opportunity tomorrow that they have absolutely zero obligation to actually deliver. It's literally trading your real, present value for their fake future value. And right alongside future faking, we have the incredibly common tactic of breadcrumbing. This is the art of giving just enough tiny intermittent signals of possibility to keep you walking on the treadmill. It's the manager saying something like, hey, we're discussing the budget for your role next quarter, or leadership is really noticing your extra hours right now. These little breadcrumbs offer just enough intermittent hope to keep you emotionally invested and working hard, but they mysteriously evaporate the second you actually ask for a contract or a raise. It's a psychological loop designed entirely to keep you hooked on potential. The text actually organizes these manipulative tactics into 3 distinct buckets. First, you've got your business tactics, like scope manipulation. That's the dark art of slowly piling more and more responsibilities onto your plate without ever adding more money or time. Then there are psychological tactics, like manufactured hope. That's optimism built entirely for managerial fog machines rather than concrete facts or signed paperwork. And finally, we have corporate organizational tactics, most notably strategic ambiguity. The text sharply defines this as confusion delivered with a PowerPoint accent. By keeping goals and responsibilities just a little bit blurry, management maintains maximum flexibility while ensuring you take the blame if things go wrong. The ultimate goal of all these patterns? Precarity management, keeping you highly productive by keeping you permanently uncertain. Finally, let's wrap up with section 5, learning to play the game, and how to go from worker to player. So, the big question, how do you actually protect yourself from a system that is optimized for extraction? Well, you start by cutting through all that we're a family jargon and asking the cold structural questions. Who actually owns the table you're sitting at? Who is writing the pitch and who holds the rights to the outcome? Who controls the risk? And most importantly, when things inevitably go sideways, who is left carrying the consequences? You've got to conduct a ruthless audit of your working relationships and clearly identify who is really holding the leverage and who is just a piece on the board. To make that leap from an extracted worker to an empowered player, you need a total mindset shift. You have to actively work to build your own assets. You've got to own the systems you operate within, or better yet, build new ones entirely. You must control your own distribution and your own audience. You need to learn how to package your knowledge so that it can scale and generate value without requiring your direct hourly labor. In short, you must create your own leverage. It's all about shifting from selling your fleeting time to owning a product, an audience, or a skill set that has independent, unshakable value in the broader market. And this quote really brings it all home. The lesson is not to become dishonest. The lesson is to stop being only a replaceable part of someone else's machine. This text makes it abundantly clear you do not need to become some toxic manipulator to win. You don't have to start future faking or breadcrumbing your colleagues, but you absolutely cannot remain ignorant of the game being played around you. You must build your own leverage so you can never be reduced to just a temporary janitor program in someone else's architecture. So the question you really have to ask yourself tomorrow morning is this: are you going to keep selling your fragile hours, or are you going to start building your unshakable assets?